It was two functions for me today. Partly talk about my life at the bar, because some of you may not be particularly interested in the job, but I'm sure, hopeful that some of you are at least. And then I'll talk about my practice and the bar more generally, and then I'll talk about the job opportunities coming up. Jess did ask me one question while we were in our pre-meeting, namely in terms of the start date for the job. I know it's been advertised as April, but that is not cast in stone. And if the right candidate can't start until later than that, in the summer, June, July, then that candidate will get the job. It's as simple as that. So if that foreshadows any questions that any of you have, what I want to do is find a suitable candidate for this job, and the fact they can't start in April is not an essential component of the job spec. Matt, do you want to just introduce yourself?
My name is Matt Shelton. I work with Duncan. I am a marketing person, marketing consultant. So I will be overseeing the marketing side of both the job and of the placement.
So we are here. Some of you may know where we are. We are at Bar Iberico in Hockley in Nottingham, and in actual fact, Dan Lindsay, who owns this place, I've known Dan since 1999, in fact, so I can actually say since the last century. In fact, Dan came to my wedding in 2008, and some of you may know, if you potentially may have Googled me, I don't know, I have quite a long-standing history, personal history in Nottingham, and that remains the case. And in fact, I have a number of clients here in Nottingham that are very close friends of mine that I know from my days when I had my own bars and restaurants. And I know that they say you shouldn't be friends with your clients, but you don't have much choice if you were friends before you came into the legal profession. But that's where we're doing it from. I suppose it was Matt's idea to do it from a licensed premises. We were going to do it for World Service, but they don't open on a Tuesday, and Dan wasn't able to let us in, so we're here at Bar Iberico. So just to give you a little background about me, I was in the drinks and license trade for a 20-year period. I was a sales manager for a brewery called Whitbread, who subsequently have gone on to be hoteliers and retailers, food retailers, food and drink retailers, I should say. But at the time they were brewers. They brewed Boddingtons, for example. So I was a sales manager for them for 5 years, originally in Manchester, and then I came over to Nottingham. That's how I initiated my contact with the city. Did that for 5 years. 4 years, following that for 4 years, I was an area manager for a pub company down south. Looked after 20 pubs there or thereabouts. It did fluctuate at times, but roughly that. So the managers in those pubs reported to me. And then following that, I opened my first restaurant, and then which isn't there anymore in Nottingham. There were two of them, in fact, called Scruffy's. One was on Derby Road, the other was on Stony Street in the Lace Market. I also had Brass Monkey. I opened Brass Monkey in 1999. In fact, Matt used to DJ there, although I knew him prior to that, and so we've stayed friends since then. I also had Cast at Nottingham Playhouse, which is still there, but is a sorry shadow of what it once was, sadly. And I also had a pub called the Bag of Nails in Lenton. So anyway, I had 6 bars and restaurants. First 8 years I had those, they were extremely successful and I did well, and then for various reasons, which I won't dwell on now, business started to struggle, and a couple of years after that I lost everything, and I guess I was 39 years of age at the time, and I was faced with a decision about what to do in my life, and I decided to throw a Hail Mary, I suppose. I thought that I've always been I think Matt will agree, a fairly self-confident individual, and I felt I had friends at the bar who encouraged me to do it, which I think pushed me in the right direction. And over a fairly short period of time, I decided I wanted to be a barrister in licensing law. So I did the GDL at NTU. I also did the BPTC, as it then was. at NTU. And I was fortunate enough, following that, for various reasons, to get a pupillage at Citadel Chambers in Birmingham, which is where I still am, in fact. I think I was fortunate for two reasons, really, to get a pupillage at Citadel. Firstly, it's a criminal set. And because when I first started practicing, well, obviously pupillage and then following that tenancy, I didn't have a licensing practice to speak of at all. In fact, I was starting from scratch. I think my knowledge of licensing law at the time was actually pretty weak. So I had to build myself up, build my knowledge up from scratch. And so accordingly, I had to eat, I had to go practice and earn a living somehow. So I did practice in crime for 5 or 6 years, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It made me a far better advocate today than I otherwise would have been if I hadn't have been in crime. And actually, a lot of stuff I do in licensing touches upon crime, actually. A lot of the time I'm dealing with incidents that occur at licensed premises that can involve knives and guns and drugs and all that other rock and roll type of stuff. So a grounding in crime has been incredibly useful. The other reason I was fortunate in terms of Birmingham was that every other major city outside London has or had a dominant licensing law firm or licensing law personality. Sorry, the camera's gone. Is that? Hang on. Are we still on?
Yeah, you're there. Don't worry. Lost you for a minute.
Right, fine. But I was lucky in Birmingham that there wasn't really anyone who dominated the licensing law landscape, and so it was serendipitous. I got a pupillage there. It just so happened it was the best place for me to go, and so that enabled me to build my licensing practice perhaps more swiftly and purposefully than I otherwise would have been able to. So did crime for a few years in conjunction with licensing, and then around 2017, I guess, around that time, I decided to drop crime. I'd still do a little bit because sometimes my licensing clients get into a little bit of bother here and there, but generally speaking, my practice is focused around licensing. But what has happened over the last couple of years in particular is that my practice has evolved quite significantly now, because I'm probably dealing with more bigger groups, people who've got a number of pubs and bars, and they have other legal issues that crop up, particularly around issues to landlord and tenant, contractual issues that may arise, employment issues. So I found my practice has evolved to be more complex now, and whilst it is still rooted in licensing, there are many more strands to it now, and I really enjoy that side of it. I do enjoy. I've got, so what distinguishes me, I would say, is that public access accounts for at least 80%. You could argue 90% of my practice, actually, because we have an in-house solicitors at our chambers, which I don't think any other chambers in the country does. We actually have a solicitors firm that sits within chambers, and I get about 10% of my work from them, and so that's effectively public access, frankly, because they don't really get involved. And so accordingly, I think you could argue 90%, certainly 8% of my practice is public access, which has its own challenges, has its own benefits, and certainly means that I've got more control over the process in terms of advising a client and taking instructions from them that a solicitor isn't involved. But that presents difficulties. You know, they're going to call me at certain times that perhaps other barristers wouldn't expect. Some barristers just don't like giving their phone out to clients. Well, I ain't got any choice, frankly. And I think we'd say in the course of a normal day, I normally get 2 or 3 calls from numbers I don't recognise. And the majority of the time, that's new clients who found me on the internet and or by other means. The other thing that distinguishes my practice as well, and this has been a huge string to my bow, actually, is I've got a litigation ticket. So I'm authorised to litigate, and so I do engage with quite a lot of litigation with solicitors, which I do enjoy that as well. I quite enjoy going toe-to-toe with corporate solicitors in particular, who aren't expecting a barrister to weigh in with an email. Sometimes it can be quite a punchy email as well. So I enjoy that aspect of my practice too. And what has happened is my practice it reached a point last January, February, March where it was it was going crazy. It had been building and building and building. It went crazy. And then obviously COVID came and it stopped for 3 months, and then it was busy again. Last July was a very busy month for me, for example. And then it was up and down a little bit, but it was still not a bad year last year. In the end, it was okay. But I got to February this year, and as soon as the Prime Minister announced that the pubs were going to reopen, I got quite a bit of work from COVID non-compliance in pubs as well. Once the Prime Minister announced that the pubs were going to reopen in April, on April the 13th, it just exploded. My work just went absolutely crazy, and it hasn't really stopped since. And so I'm now at a stage where I absolutely feel I need an assistant to help me continue with that growth, help drive my business forward, and help continue to develop my practice. So what I'm essentially looking for from a successful candidate is 3 things really, and then there's a 4th aspect to it that I think would be appealing to anybody who is seeking to get pupillage. So firstly, I'm looking for someone who's going to be able to assist me on the legal side. So that's why I've had this debate. I've actually spoken to other barristers on the Midland Circuit who have assistants who have questioned whether the person I'm taking on needs to be in some way legally qualified, and we've considered that, myself and Matt, and we are of the view that they absolutely do need to be, because whoever is successful in this, I believe, needs to understand and conceptualise what my job entails. The legal concepts need to be clearly understood to them, and they need to be able to express certain things in a way that only someone who's legally qualified can. Also, there's going to be requirements. I do quite a lot of appeals against licences that have been revoked, for example. So that's at the magistrate's court. I'm going to need input into bundles. I'm going to need some input into skeleton arguments. Obviously, I'll have ultimate sign-off of that. I'll need to have oversight of it, but there will be a lot of involvement that requires a level of legal understanding and legal knowledge. So that's the first aspect of the job. Secondly, I have, Matt will absolutely confirm this, I am, with the exception of my Instagram account, which I do that myself. I really enjoy doing that. It's useful as a work tool. It also enables my mum to know exactly what I'm doing throughout the course of the week, which is no bad thing. And it's been a useful work tool. Actually, I just really enjoy it. So it's licensing barrister. It basically, where I go to, perhaps sometimes if I do a hearing in a place I've not been before, if I go to a new bar or restaurant, if I've got a new client, I post about that as well. So it's not so much the Instagram side of it, but certainly LinkedIn is something that I haven't been as proactive with or purposeful with as I anywhere near as I could have been. And the same goes for Twitter. In fact, I've got @licensing as a handle. I got that years ago, and I've basically effectively never used it. I've made a couple of posts years ago, and I deleted them. So not because I had to delete them, by the way, just because they look ridiculous there, frankly. So I've got that, and so I'm looking for somebody who can get involved in that. And I suppose that was one of the questions that one of this particular barrister raised with me was, you know, if you want someone who's going to be socially media savvy in some way, then is it important that they're legally qualified? Well, the point is, first of all, yes, I've already answered that. But I think the reality is that lawyers who are going to be successful going forward have to, in all likelihood, have a level of understanding of social media and how that can drive a practice forward, because the landscape has changed.
There's also the compliance.
Yeah, but there's also, and that's why the legal side of it is important, because whoever's going to be involved in that needs to understand that it has to be compliant with the Bar Standard Board's requirements in respect of output. And then also, and it probably sits hand in hand with the second point, is that my practice has evolved over time, not just in terms of the type of work I've been getting, but the type of people I represent. So when I first started, it was principally off licenses, corner shops, because that's the bargain basement end of, I suppose, of the licensing world. But as time's gone on, the type of clients I've got has got better. I've got a lot of really good bars and restaurants in my fold now, and I've got a number of people who've got a number of clients who've got a number of outlets. Who've got 3, 4, 5, 8. They've got about 9, haven't they? 12. We've got 12. So they've got clients in Nottingham who've got 12 outlets, and so I'm looking to develop that side of the practice more. A few years ago, there's a licensing lawyer called Paddy Worth. And Paddy's been very supportive of me. And Paddy is based in Leeds. And Paddy said to me, he said, one of the best parts of the job is if you can start out with a particular client who's got 1 or 2 bars and restaurants and go along for the ride with them, that they get to 5 or 10. He said that is just an incredible thing to experience, that you can help them a little bit along the way. You can be part of that journey. You can see them grow as a business. He said it's an amazing thing to be part of, and I have experienced that to some extent, and I want to continue to experience that. So the candidate would also be involved in that from my practice from a marketing point of view. So those are the 3 aspects, but there's a 4th aspect where I think would appeal to anybody who wanted to be an advocate in any way, and whether that's post LPC or post BPC. Licensing, it's a funny world, really. You get it's not a reserved legal activity at local authority level. So you do not, and the Licensing Act is clear on this, you do not need to be legally qualified to conduct a hearing at local authority level. And so accordingly, there's such a wide range of people who operate in the field. You've got a small number of QCs at the top end. Most of their work is advisory, but they do hearings, and there's no question that they operate in that sphere and are active in the sphere. At the other end, you have a number of licensing consultants, some of whom are extremely good, by the way, and 1 or 2 that I work closely with are of solicitor or barrister standard in terms of their advocacy skills, and then there are others that, frankly, are it's like the Wild West, and then plenty in between. And so any successful candidate, it wouldn't happen straight away. It would have to be the right opportunity. The client would have to be fully appraised of the situation in terms of where they were at in their legal career. But there's no question in my mind that a successful candidate, at some point after a few months in the role, and once they understand licensing law and what it's about, and they've been to a few hearings with me and can see how they operate, that I would be entirely comfortable in the right circumstances that they would conduct those hearings. And initially with me there, but I wouldn't have to follow that. That would have to be the case all the way through. And I do believe, having been through the pupillage process, and I know that the people do these, is it the LPC where you go to the county court, that's quite formulaic, and actually it doesn't really involve, frankly, a great deal of advocacy. This would be a hearing that would require quality advocacy skills, and what a thing to have on your CV to say, I've done these hearings and I've got this outcome, and this hearing was, and the other thing is, something just occurred, because these hearings, a lot of them occur via Microsoft Teams or Zoom now, certainly at Birmingham, for example, they're recorded, so you could actually forward those hearings as part of your CV potentially when you're applying for pupillage. So I think there are a number of aspects of the job that I'm going to be assisted by a successful candidate. There's no question that my practice requires this now. It's reached a stage where I need to find somebody who's going to help me. I want somebody who, by the way, I said this to Matt, I want somebody who's going to have their own opinions, who's going to challenge me when they think I need challenging. I don't want somebody who's just going to sit there, and I want somebody who's going to play an active part in driving my practice forward. But equally, I do believe a couple of things, really. Fundamentally believe that, firstly, it will help develop whoever's there from the stage they're at now to a point where they are much more likely to get pupillage. But the other thing that I can say with some confidence, and I know Matt will agree with this because we've both been connected to this industry, it's a great industry. It's fantastic. And it's just good fun. And my practice is a really interesting practice. It's, no 2 days are the same. It's good fun. I have very, very strong relationship with my clients. Sometimes people think my relationship with my clients is too close, but I don't care if they think that. I'm not scared of giving my clients robust and straightforward advice, even if I've known them for 30 years. And if I tell them, if I believe that what they're doing is wrong, and I will tell them that, and it doesn't prevent me undertaking and discharging my duties to them. It doesn't in any way compromise my independence, and so I'm perfectly comfortable to stand in front of anybody and say my relationships with my clients are extremely strong and extremely close, but in no way it impedes me discharging my duties to them and my wider duties professionally in terms of the Bar Standards Board Code of Conduct. So, and I guess that's another thing I'd be looking for, is somebody who has the correct temperament and personality. And that doesn't really have to be the most outgoing person in the world, by the way. It doesn't follow always, but it needs to be somebody who can understand and appreciate and I guess feed off the value of relationships. Because my background, my first job was in sales. I was a sales manager for a brewery, and I learned very early on, you've got a good relationship with somebody, it counts for so much. They trust you, they respect you, and that's a two-way street, by the way. When I was at Whitbread, I didn't lose a single client to another brewer, not one, in 5 years. And that was because I would always go the extra yard for my clients, or customers, as I used to call them then. And I've carried that on now into my practice. And that is why my practice has grown as exponentially as it has, because over time, clients think you've done a good job for them, they'll tell other people, and that's how word gets round. And so that's a hugely important thing for me as well, is those relationships with my clients. So I think I need to say one other thing, actually, because I've talked about me, I've talked about my practice, talked about the narrative of my life. What I've not talked about, I think actually that this may be of more interest to but maybe one or two of you potentially, is the job of a barrister. I was, when I lost, because I lost my businesses and decided, as I said, to come to the bar. I was in a very low place at that time, and it was a huge risk for me to take in many ways. But it's without question the best thing I've ever done. I absolutely adore what I do, and I adore being a barrister. I like working for myself. I like the fact I can make decisions about the direction my practice can go in. I like the fact that I stand or fall by those decisions. I like being around clever people all the time, as you are as a barrister. If your professional colleagues are also intelligent people, you feed off that. You can exchange ideas, and it's great to be able to pick the phone up. It's a collaborative profession in many ways. So I guess I understand the prize at the end of this for you guys, and I understand the allure of that, and I would never seek to dissuade someone from that. It's an incredible way to earn a living, and if I can in some way help one of you to end up in a place where you love doing this job half as much as I do, then I'll feel I've achieved something. It's just I just adore being a barrister, and so you may get some people trying to dissuade you. All I can say is, from my personal experience, without question, it's the best thing I ever did. So the best decision I ever made. So it's 18:59. So I've sort of pretty much on the nail for the 25 minutes.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. It was, I'm sure everyone will agree, very interesting insights into how kind of you've got here.
Yeah.
We've
The other thing is, I've just realised Matt hasn't said anything. So
I'm afraid I was going to just put Matt on the spot briefly. And we've got a few questions coming in on the chat. So whilst people are doing that, and I've got a few notes. I did wonder, Matt, if you'd be so kind, because we have got a few of the 10-week placement students on the call as well. So whether you
Sorry,
could,
yeah, that's more Matt's bag than mine. So.
yeah, if
Sorry.
you could give just a brief overview of kind of some of the ideas we've at least discussed. I know it's a broad idea, but yeah.
So from a marketing point of view with Duncan, what I've done with him, and you know, the way we work together is that Duncan comes from within the hospitality industry, and in that sense is almost unique amongst licensing barristers and licensing lawyers. So we work very much from that point of view. We work very much from being independent. We both spent a lot of time working with and being businesses within the independent side of the hospitality industry. So it is very much coming from that point of view. There is some sort of strategy in place, and I've heard it, and there are ideas that we need to work on in the future. There are things like SEO in place and that kind of thing, and there is a common strategy. Where we need help is bridging the gap between what I know about marketing and the whole side of the legal side of licensing, because I have no experience in that side at all. Whoever the successful candidate is immediately going to be involved in things like social media, because we need that expertise in terms of compliance. We need that expertise in terms of moving much faster than we do at the moment, because Duncan is very busy. So if I try and put something together and it's bouncing back and forth,
I mean, look, I'm useless at that. I am.
I didn't want to say that, but
I'm useless.
Simply, so there's there is a lot to go into there. You will learn about marketing in general. You will learn about PR. You will learn about networking and that kind of thing. And it won't just be within the hospitality industry. We do expect people to work in terms of networking within the legal profession as well. So that's the kind of role that is there. The people that come on the placement will be involved in that as well. There is one project in particular that we've earmarked for the placement people, which will be elements of market research, elements of legal research, elements of putting together a plan as well, which will all be done under guidance. No one's going to be sat in a corner and just told to get on and do some Instagram or anything like that. There is going to be some structure there, and the person on the placement will go away with a project that they can say, I started this, and this is how we ended it. This was the plan, because it's something that we are going to do. But again, it will need someone with a lot of legal knowledge to put that together, because it's part of the licensing side of things. So that's what they'll be doing. And again, they will be involved in the legal side of things with Duncan as well. But that's an overview. But because we haven't done this before, the role is going to form itself as it goes along as well. So if someone has a background in sales and marketing, or someone has a background in social media and says, I think that we need to do it like this for these reasons, then we're not going to turn around and go, well, no, we think this. The idea is that we get a strong candidate who has ideas.
Yeah, lovely. Now, we've got quite a few questions coming in, so I'll just fire away and either of you can answer as best as you see fit. So this has come up a couple of times about, is driving essential? Having a driving license.
It's going to be tough. I mean, there are barristers who don't have a driving license. there are barristers who don't have a driving licence. In fact, there's a barrister who operates in licensing and doesn't drive. So never say never. Majority of my business is in Birmingham and Nottingham. Where I would be looking to develop that business would probably still be in those two cities. So if somebody could persuade me, and they were outstanding, and they could persuade me that they would, because, I mean, look, you know what, the answer is yes, actually. Given, it's not ideal, but given all I've said about the marketing, given what I've said about the social media, and given what I've said about the bundle side of things, yes is the answer. I think it wouldn't be ideal, but if the candidate was right, then I think given a lot of the matters can be dealt with remotely, then certainly the right candidate, if they couldn't drive, if they were the right candidate, it wouldn't be a bar to them getting the job, is the answer.
Okay.
That answer, my response evolved a little bit there, didn't it?
It
well,
did.
I thought it through. I think initially I did say it was essential, but I've just reflected on what I've just said and what the job requirement is actually.
I think if someone isn't driving, then I think it's realistic for them to expect to have I don't know longer hours, because some of what they're going to do is they are going to need to get on.
It would
public
be helpful.
transport.
Yeah, it would be helpful. I think that's right.
What might be a 5 or 10 minute journey in a car might take half hour or 45 minutes.
I wouldn't want an amazing candidate to be put off applying because they can't drive. No. So no, absolutely not. So there we go.
So I'm going to tag two things together here to say. One is about whether, with the barrister's assistant position, whether it could be open to international students, whether you would be able to provide a work visa. And then later, someone has asked, do you know, is it possible to find and secure a pupillage as an international student? Do you know much?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to the latter, and I suppose the answer to the former is, subject to that person meeting the criteria and being the correct candidate, then I would do whatever I could to secure that visa. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Lovely.
But I don't know the answer to the second one. I genuinely just don't know. Sorry.
All right. No, don't worry. We might have to look into that a little bit more.
I don't do immigration law, so
no. Here we go. What influenced your decision to be a barrister as opposed to being a solicitor within your legal field?
That's there was one practical reason, which is that when I lost my bars and restaurants, I'd given about £1 million worth of personal guarantees, and I went personally bankrupt. And it is easier if you've been bankrupt. I think it's outrageous, this actually. It's easy if you've been personally bankrupt to become a barrister than it is a solicitor, because so the rationale behind that is that solicitors are handling client money. But just because you're handling, people go bankrupt for all sorts of reasons, and that doesn't mean that they are incapable of handling other people's money or not. But that's the position. So there was a practical reason behind it. I suppose, having had my own businesses for 10 years and therefore worked for myself, I don't think, but I think in life, you're never always completely your own boss. You're answerable to the tax man, you're answerable to the police, that there are authorities that govern the way that you live your life. So unless you're an oligarch and a billionaire, you still have to operate within certain rules in society. But certainly, given the choice, having worked for myself for that long, the thought of working for myself as a member of the independent bar appealed more than being within a firm. And actually, one of the things I really like about my practice is that I'm not a partner in a firm, and I've not got other partners put me under pressure to bill everything. I decide entirely what I bill, and a lot of the time I don't bill my clients for stuff. If a client rings me up, I'm in the car, and he asks me a question about something, and I give him the answer. I never bill him for that. And I do that partly because I can't be bothered, partly because I'm in the car and I'm driving anyway, but also because I know if I do that for them, they're not going to go anywhere else. They're not going to be interested in going to another lawyer. So it builds that loyalty up. So, and I've got total control over that. I've not got a senior partner going, you didn't bill much last week. I decide what I bill, and I really like that side of it because it enables me to evaluate. It's enabled me to grow my practice. It's built up a lot of goodwill. So, and I think it's fair to say as well. Let me answer it this way too. My practice, without question, resembles a solicitor's as much as it does a barrister's. I am unique in licensing as a barrister. There is nobody else who has a practice that vaguely resembles mine. The other barristers in licensing, they do advisory work, they do hearings, but they are much more, their relationships with the clients tends to be more transient. They are probably a bit more standoffish. That obviously, I don't mean that in a negative way, but they don't have those close relationships with the clients because they come in, they deal with the clients, and then they move on, and then they may then get instructed by them a couple of years later. But with me, my clients in Nottingham all came to me because, most of them came to me because I represented them at a hearing, and I just carried on from there. And so I have a client base that is existing, ongoing clients where they are ringing me on a regular basis, and we're doing stuff together. And so that is much more akin to a solicitor in licensing than a barrister. So my practice is very much a hybrid practice, and that's why having the litigation rights was such an important thing for me to have. So I hope that's adequately responded to the question.
Yeah, perfect. And I've got just one other here that says, obviously your job is very interesting. That comes across brilliantly. But what aspect of the licensing area makes the job fun?
Okay.
I feel like you have lots of fun.
I have a lot of fun. Well, look, we're here tonight. We're going to have a meal here. I get to go out in the trade, and often I have to buy a drink. My practice is extremely fast moving. I like that. I mean, I don't know if this is fun, but I can get a call on a Sunday night. There's been something terrible that's happened at a nightclub, and it moves so quickly in those circumstances. You know, someone could have died, and that's a terrible thing. But that doesn't mean that you don't get a lot of professional satisfaction out of helping the client through the process, dealing with the police. It can sometimes unravel at bewildering speed. My practice, if you look at my diary, look at my colleagues in chambers who are all criminal practitioners, you look at their diaries, particularly if they have a certain call, that they'll have trials in there that go forward months and months and months and months. You look at my diary, 3 weeks forward, there's not a lot in there. You've got a few appeals dotted about, but it just constantly fills up all the time, and the phone never stops ringing. So it's quite high octane. It can be quite intoxicating, and sometimes it is. I've got to in my own head. Like this week, for example, I had a hearing yesterday. I've had a hearing today. I've got 2 hearings tomorrow. So that meant I had to go into chambers on Sunday. I did 12 hours in chambers. It's incredibly satisfying when you have a week like that to get to the end of it and think, actually, I got through it. So I don't know if that's fun, but certainly that is part of the practice that perhaps isn't necessarily apparent to people that I really enjoy. But in terms of fun, there's a lot of socialising involved, a lot of interesting people. It's interesting. The practice itself is interesting. Yeah, it's great. I love it. And I get to go. My practice is national, so I get to go around the country. So I get to. I did a hearing in Canterbury not long ago. What a great place to go and visit. So yeah, I get about, and yeah. So yeah, I honestly don't believe there's a lawyer in the country that has more fun doing his job than me. So there you go.
No, and I would probably say on behalf of everyone here that really comes across. So thank you very much.
And I want whoever gets this, I want them to love it too. I do, because they'll get more out of it, and I'll get more out of them. It's as simple as that. It's just a good laugh. It's great. There's obviously a lot of serious. You've got people's livelihoods that are at stake. A lot of the time, people are bewildered by the process. Yeah, they've got a nightclub, and open it on a Saturday night, something bad happens, and they're threatened with it being closed a couple of days later. I mean, that's, you've got to manage them through that. And so it isn't, you know, it's not one endless barrel of laughs, but it's good fun. It's great fun. Thank
you very much for coming and telling us everything.
Well, and thank you for everybody for attending. I do appreciate it, and thank you for letting me talk about myself for 45 minutes. So, but anyway, thank you everybody for coming, and I hope what I hope it's done is made the position clear, and I hope. But look, I also know things can change, and you know there might be people here now who all of a sudden they get a pupillage offer in a month's time, and you know what, great, because I know ultimately that's what all of your goals are going to be, and that I also have to recognise that a successful candidate will not be sticking around forever, and but that would give me a lot of pleasure to see somebody get a pupillage, and then obviously then I would be looking for someone to replace them. So, but listen, good luck all of you in getting pupillage as well.
Thank you. I'll stop the recording now. Thank you.
Thank you.